Hey, and thank you very much for joining us here on the Modern Job Search Checklist. We always stream to LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook every Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 o'clock Central. Thank you very much for joining. My name is Mark, and right beside me here is Damian Burkle. He is the founder of Professional Transition. He calls it PIT, so wouldn't take it so literally. Uh, his organization since 1992 has found more than 10,000 job seekers jobs, and he has definitely been instrumental in every step of the way. We have with us here the wonderful Keirsten Greggs. If you watched the other show, Job Seeker Nation, you met Keirsten with Jack and I, and now she's here, and she's only the second guest, other than Damien doesn't count, the second guest uh, to appear on both shows with me.
Nice,
So,
nice.
congratulations. You get a very great distinction. We,
I'm
of
very
course,
happy.
Yes, we of course try to tear apart the career trends and job search happenings these days, and there are a lot of them. As you all probably have heard about the Great Resignation, and there's the Great Reshuffle, and there's the Big Shift, and there's all kinds of names out there. There's so many perspectives. We're just only responsible for three perspectives here in this show. So we're going to go ahead and get started. If you're in the chat, you're welcome to put your questions right now because that's the main reason why we're here. We're just warming up for the questions. All this discussion will be going on. So thank you again for joining us. Join us in the chat. Let us know where you're from, who you are, and all that kinds of stuff. And feel free to comment as we go along, and be sure you also network within the comments. If you see that somebody has a great perspective, or that might be able to helpful to you, or you might be able to help someone, reach out to them. This is what this is for, to provide that kind of environment for you. So we got a lot to tear apart. Of course, we're going to start with something about the Great Resignation. So, Kirsten, in case you don't know, and let me put her credentials back up again, she's one of them recruiters, and she's called the Trap Recruiter, and she has a very short story. Basically, it's the merging of her love for trap music and being a recruiter. So there you go. You can check out her profile. If you follow, you could just press the follow button for her. So we want to be sure to ask her, Kirsten, if it's the land grab for talent from the recruiting side, and of course we're trying to get what recruiters are thinking and how those of us in the other side of careers, or how should we counsel and direct. So that's your question, Kirsten, for you to start off with.
Okay.
Is it a land grab? Do you see companies using this time to retain better talent than they ever had before, or are they still strategizing as things kind of pivot around, and probably pivot around the clock at this point?
So first and foremost, I want to say that I don't like these terms, these broad brush terms that we use, like the Great Resignation, like it's some, major thing that's happening here. It's something that's been happening for quite some time, and it's all narrative control. And at this point, the narrative is being controlled by people like us, the folks who are in charge of the
Yes,
jobs, the
yes, I
corporations.
can dig that.
and
Okay.
it, and until we take the time to really look at this from the perspective that we are, we've all been, for the most part, outside of our normal working situation, meaning that we've had to make adjustments either in location, style, and even in the type of talent that we're looking for. So if we were just holding places, and when I say we, I mean organizations, we were just holding place and hoping for things, for when things were going to quote unquote get back to normal, then
Hmm.
that was a very huge missed opportunity for you to really redesign how you attract, how you select, and ultimately how you're going to retain talent. Now, you have a follow-up question there that says, how do you see companies using this time to retain the best talent? And I hope that they are. I
Hmm.
hope that they are taking that time to, again, rethink why this person who was in this department or in this role, who's been with the company for quite some time, or who has, even if it's just been a year, but, has proven and shown that they are a subject matter expert, or that they really understand things, and that they can, they can be flexible, and that they can adjust very quickly, that they can change at the pace or ahead of the pace even of what's happening in the marketplace. Why aren't we looking at them first? I always advocate for internal talent, not to shine a bad light on the other half of my business of career coaching. I do try to get people into jobs, but the thing is, like, our internal talent are a great source. They are an excellent pipeline. And if we're not taking the time to really see where they are and how we can continue to develop their careers, and maybe we do develop them into another organization, I mean, that's okay too. But we need to be taking care of employees in a way that we haven't holistically taken care of them before. And this is just, like I said, another broad thing. And I do hope organizations have taken the time to do these things. But given what I'm seeing out in the land, out in, the Twitterverse, and, on LinkedIn and Facebook and other places, I just see that the majority of folks were really just, like I said, looking forward to getting back to normal. And that was a huge missed opportunity.
Yeah. And I don't think there's any more normal to get back to. This is a whole new world we're now navigating, and it doesn't
Yes.
look the same. And I said on the show, as well as an article that I wrote on my blog this past, was published this morning, that I think now we can honestly say, if you're young professional, or you just graduated, forget listening to your parents' advice.
I agree.
Forget it.
I agree.
It's a wrap. It's a done deal. Read the article on my blog, and you'll get some of the reasons why. And I just listed some. I probably came up with 13, but I think I only listed like 6 or 7. But I think this world we're all kind of going, okay, it's a wave, and it's whoever can ride the wave. And the turbulence of the wave is going to really win in all this whole thing, whether you're a company or whether you're a job seeker. Of course, I want to just say hi real quick, though. We got Rick here from New York, Pennsylvania, or from York, Pennsylvania. I'm sorry.
Hi,
And
Rick.
then there's Elizabeth from Boston. She's back. Thank you, Elizabeth, for coming back. Chloe Lauderbeck is with us from Raleigh, Durham area, and I'm sure there's a whole bunch of more people. If you feel brave enough to put your name in the chat and where you're from, that'd be great. And also, this is for you. So the concerns you have, this is the time to go through it. So Damian, you have seen a lot of waves in your time since 1992 in helping job seekers. You've navigated several different recessions at this particular time. Do you see the behavior changing in job seekers or companies? And you can feel free to kind of talk about either one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to what we were talking about, here's a real life example that's going on right now, actually, where I used to work. The company spent millions of dollars to take a series of siloed companies and force everybody together. And in that process, many positions were eliminated, and people were just tossed out on the street with no warning. Well, now, lo and behold, they have a new president that came in that has no alliances to anybody, because frankly, it was a good old boy network. And now, because of what's happened, they have taken the time, and now they're ripping the company completely apart. And now they're reorganizing it by silo or business unit, brand, basically by brand. And again, there are going to be a lot of people that are out on the street. And I'm confident that if it weren't for COVID and people being out of the office and a huge dip in the business, that this massive reorganization, looking at the workforce completely differently, probably would not have happened. And this time around, both the job searcher and many companies have had time to reflect and have been impacted many times directly by COVID. And that has then brought about a lot of deep thought. And in reaction to that deep thought, people are making major moves. And in many cases, and here's the difference between other economic downturns, it's proactive instead of reactive. In the past, it's been people have been put out of work because of the fact that there's been a downturn. What I'm seeing now is lots of people moving away from companies, resigning, and moving on to bigger and better opportunities proactively. And that to me is the biggest difference, that COVID has served as a stimulator for people to take a hard look at their life and their career and begin to make proactive job changes in ways that I've never seen before.
Yeah, that's for sure. And this came up, and I was doing research and listening to Dr. Don Graham on Dr. Don on Careers, a Wharton School of Business podcast. This this last week's episode, she had someone from Amazon who was talking about their returnship program, where they're welcoming those who've been off for pregnancy or because of COVID or because sickness or take care, whatever it was. Their help on board, they're welcoming them by helping them to have a 16-week or so around their adjustment period for them to get back to work. So, meaning that maybe I was thinking that maybe there might be the great resigning, in the sense that you might bring some of those old employees to build some of those needs back, but not so fast, because people are saying, not at those wages, you're not going to bring me back at. So that becomes a very interesting standoff. Keirsten, do you see that there's going to be at some point, or in some industries, a standoff between the talent and the company, and the way that they've perhaps that talent had a year to think about it, and they're going, well, it's not the same relationship anymore?
I think we're already seeing it, and I think we're seeing people be a little bit more vocal about how they are choosing their employer. And again, it's up to the employers to shift their thinking and to accommodate, and not in a bad way, not that doesn't mean make concessions for, but to actually accommodate and be more compromising in how they are approaching their employees and how they're approaching potential talent. So I really did appreciate Amazon's program. I like the returnship thing. I worked for an organization that was probably ahead of its time on this, but we had something called the assignments panel, and I haven't really seen it replicated in other organizations. Not because we were a defense contractor. We always had folks who were coming up for their contracts were ending, and we didn't want to lose employees just because we could possibly lose work. So, when something did descope, especially larger programs, we found it beneficial. Like every week, the leaders, hiring managers, anyone who had jobs open, or even, the organizational leaders, we would get in a room with the recruiters and with HR, and we would go through a list of who's immediately available, who's coming available in the next, 2 weeks or 1 month or whatever the case would be, what programs they were on. And then there was also an alternative list. We didn't go through those folks one by one, but the folks who were, had the immediate need, our employees who were losing coverage, we went through one by one. Okay. And their manager had to be there to speak on their behalf, or if their manager wasn't available, the HR person had to be there to speak on their behalf and advocate for them to move to another program so that we did not lose talent. And then there was another list that was also started to be very robust of people who wanted to change, like they wanted to do something different in the organization. And we can look at them too. And our mindset and our culture was such that you always check that list first before you start sourcing, before you go outside of the organization and start looking for folks. Look on the list and see who's available. Look on the list and see who we want to do that with. So the returnship program kind of reminded me of that. And it also has some internship vibes to it too, in the sense that their positions are listed as returnship positions. So that's signaling to people, again, who are ready to come back to work or who are looking that we see you as a value. You're not just, an average internal employee who's looking for a new role, or you're not just someone, like they're really setting them apart. And I can appreciate that. And I think that that's going to add a lot of value, the same way, like I said, that we do for interns. We list jobs as internships and why they are. Why they're that way and why they're paid that way. And the training program is paid. No, it is a 16-week program. It is paid. So hopefully, folks will take advantage of that. And even again, for those who want to come back to the org, because again, we don't leave jobs, we leave people, they want to come back to the people, but they may not want to be in that same role again. Or maybe during the time that they were out, they developed or they fine-tuned another skill set that they want to add value to the organization with. So they may be able to look at other positions as well. And I do think that's a great thing that Amazon's doing. And I think that if other organizations can afford it, because it is a costly thing, same as internships. We see companies who can only have 1 or 2 interns a year, if any, or only certain groups can have interns because they just don't have the budget. They just don't have the overhead to afford it. So if organizations can afford it, I think it's a great precedent that Amazon has set, and I hope more larger organizations follow suit.
Yeah, you're right. There are organizations that have done it in the past. There are big organizations that are doing it right now. But I think one thing you mentioned about the government, I think there's a good point. But one difference in the government, and depending upon what sector of government we're talking about, because there's many different sectors, is that in the past, the history of the government has only recently changed. And then what I'm saying is that in the past, they're used to having the president or the governor save them by funding whatever what the deficit was, until about 2005. And then when George Bush came into play, he had what was called the base realignment closure programs, where a lot of the bases had closed to house a lot of the federal employees. So it took them, though, 6 years to implement that program. And I only know about it because I trained a bunch of folks and coach a whole bunch of folks under that program, where people were thinking and were very sentimental about their spot and their program and their job and the people, and they would hate to believe, and they were hoping that they didn't want to get coaching because they knew the government was going to save them. Well, that did not happen. But having said that, people are naturally, or this time around in this generation coming up, you see that sentimentality disappearing. They don't have that loyalty because we've stopped, us baby boomers have stopped passing that idea that the company's going to take care of you. We know that's a lie and a false statement now. But there is a little bit of hope if companies were willing to invest in some of what they have. I would think in the long game they would save money, but again, you got to have money to save money. In essence, is what you're talking about. Damian, what's your perspective? And maybe you can. Did you see anything different as far as how people are feeling now as opposed to back then?
Yeah, I don't know if either of you heard Rizdale on NPR last night in Marketplace, but he's been following a restaurateur,
Mm-hmm.
and the two of them connected right as the pandemic was starting, and
Mm-hmm.
he had to let all his people go. Well, now he's getting ready to reopen, and Kai said, "What have you learned, and have you changed your business model?" And what was astounding to me is the first thing he said is no more paying the waitresses $2.30 or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
and then have them surviving on tips. He said, now I'm going to make less money, but the first thing I'm going to do is raise their pay to a living wage.
Mm-hmm.
Then take the tips and divide them across a wider range of people so that those that come to work at my place know that they can survive. And he said, if
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't for the pandemic and us having to struggle as much as we did with carryout, he
Mm-hmm.
said, I would have never thought of doing something like that. So there is a situation where a small business has made a fundamental shift in the entire way that they're approaching their business.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm seeing more of that now where people are reacting to the situations of their employees in a much more humane manner. Now, that being said, there are also other organizations that are out there that are not sympathetic, are not giving increases, and are basically saying, you will be back in the office by, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And to me, it sounds like that they really haven't learned very much like the life-changing event that COVID-19 has been.
Yeah, yeah, and legitimately, there are companies that lost money during that time because some of them were able to pivot, and some of them just pivoted way too slow for everybody else. So it became this has become a hazard. But it's kind of like you're signaling whether the COVID was an inconvenience or was an opportunity, and that's going to make a big difference over
I
whether
like that.
somebody wants to work with you or not here coming in the future. I
Mhm.
mean, I would think that in your mind, you had to innovate, which really wasn't innovate. What you did was you followed the leader in your space and found out they pivoted first. So you just took a little bit too long here. I love what Simone said. Hey, Simone, she says, loyalty, invest in your people and have great leadership to keep those great people. Absolutely. So, all in all, is it easier to, I don't know. I don't coach people one on one these days. I mean, I don't know how much coaching. Kirsten, you're doing a lot of coaching. Damon, you're doing some through Pitt. I do some through my email list that I have every day, which is happening tomorrow. But all in all, Damian, do you see how is coaching becoming a little bit more challenging? Do you feel like you have to innovate within your strategies to reach people that or help people move forward in their job search? Of course, we know that the first thing is their mindset is to get from the old one to the new one. So, is there a pivot? And you probably have several because you've been doing this so long. But is there one pivot that you help people with in order to help them to change direction to the right path?
Right. I think the most critical thing that happens in this case is being able to account for your time. How did you spend that 15 months? Did you
Hmm.
take the time to retrain, retool, get certified, or did you not? Did you just sit at home? And
Hmm.
positioning yourself as a leader, if you will, someone who did not sit around, demonstrates to the employer your strong sense of urgency, your ability to self manage, and a deep understanding that it is your responsibility to constantly improve and stay ahead of the competition, and to not be afraid to step up to the plate rather, and be an early adapter. And so where the difference is that we fill in that blank year, if you will, if they weren't working, with things that they did, so that you can look at it and realize that it was actually a very productive year, as opposed to being at home, sitting on the sofa drinking beer.
Yes, Keirsten?
So I'm a little, I don't know, I'm bad at my facial expressions. So like that brought me a little bit of alarm in the sense that I want to go back to the loyalty statement. I think you said it was Simone
Yes,
who
Simone.
mentioned,
Yes.
yes. And you had, mentioned loyalty regarding, who's staying with companies and things like that, and talking about boomers. And you guys always skip my generation, Gen X, act like we don't exist. It's like boomers, millennials, and Zs, and then everyone else. But you guys always skip us. But I think what's happened is that the shift for me as a career coach, having been a recruiter first and foremost for the past 21 years, and then always being called upon, and even in my corporate career, offering guidance and assistance in how job seekers are navigating their job search, or how they're navigating the organization. I have taken myself out of the equation a bit more these days. And when it comes to loyalty specifically, I'm advocating for people to be loyal to themselves first, and then to an organization. Because if you're not true to what you want and what you desire and what you need from an organization, then really be any good to it. I mean, what's the point of staying somewhere if you can't even bring your whole self, if that makes sense? And I like the thing that you said too, Mark, about, was this a opportunity or an inconvenience? And for some people, this, I don't want to call it a break, because that seems like, kind of seems like people are lazy, but some people needed a few months to not do anything, to reset, to recharge, and to really make decisions about how they wanted to move forward and what they wanted to move forward at. So I don't put anything on anyone that did not write a book during this time, that did not do something that they is considered extraordinary to the outside world. I want to know what's extraordinary for you. What did you do? And some days, and I'm going to speak for myself, some days putting on clothes like today was a congratulations, you did it. Like that was a big deal. Or answering all the emails, cleaning out your email box, or even searching for a job. Searching for a job is a full-time job. It's difficult, it's arduous, it's hard. There's a lot that goes into your job search. So if you didn't pick up something completely new, I'm not going to down you for that. And I will also push back on hiring managers who feel like they have to put some type of pressure on people to do things. Because even folks who were working from home or working remotely, wherever they were, like they had to make adjustments, they had to do things. There's this misconception that going back into the office means that more work is going to get done, and studies show that more work actually gets done when there aren't as many distractions. So the problem that we face is that there's a lot of corporations that are approaching this return to work conversation from you guys have been on vacation for a year, you guys have been not working for a year, and that's just not true. That's just not true at all. So that mindset needs to change as well as in addition to, like I said, how we are really framing this conversation on who's our potential employees, how we're trying to attract, who we're trying to attract, and the sources from which and the sources from which we are attracting that talent.
Yeah, Damian.
We're in agreement, especially the perception of work at home is easy peasy. Many people that I have talked to have said the very same thing, Keirsten, about being so much more productive at home, not having the commute, being able to work through lunch if they want. And any company, I agree with you, that thinks they're going to pick up productivity by forcing their people back, well, I mean, they'll learn, because now, this is what people have told me, now, at home, I can go from meeting to meeting to meeting. When I'm in the office, I run into people in the hallway, people pop their head in, we chat, we get up and get coffee, et cetera, et cetera. Your total productivity is going to be down, because you're basically going to spend your entire day in meetings, if it was like what I used to do. Yeah. And you're not going to have that streamlined approach that you have working from home, when you work according to when you feel you are most productive, minus the mandatory meetings that you have to be at. In addition, and Keirsten, I think you said this, but studies have shown that those that are working from home usually work longer than an 8-hour day, simply because they can. So, I think the bottom line is, as more and more people return to the office, this found productivity of the perception of going back and productivity staying the same or increasing is an illusion. I think it's just going to go away. And it's such a shame, because if anything, corporate America should have learned that their employees are all adults, know what their job is, that there was a way that has been found that they can do their job without the commute to come into the office, and that forcing people to come in is more of an ego trip than anything else. And, to me, it's sad, but that's what's going on. And frankly, for those, for lack of a better term, orthodox companies, I think that they're going to drop and be outdistanced by those that are tolerable and willing, and in turn encourage this mobile workforce that we have become.
Well, the young folks, and I know, Mark, you mentioned an article that you had just written today. It's the young people who had their internships last summer, and even this year as well. They're the workforce. They're the new workforce. I have a cousin who's in tech, and he had his internship 100% remotely. Like, that's the new way. Like, those are the folks that job seekers should be asking questions to, the people who don't know anything else, the people whose introduction to the workforce was this model that we're in now, or, a hybrid model. That's not everyone that's had that. I've worked remotely from home or from someplace else outside of an office for almost 4 years. I know, Mark, you work remotely as well. I'm not sure about you, Damian. But yeah, so, like the transition for us was maybe a little bit different. For me, when I worked in corporate, I had a little placard, a whiteboard that said, "This is the quiet corner." So, when people wanted to come in to my office and complain and chit and chat, as Damian said, if I was in the middle of something and I didn't have time, yeah, you could still come and get your respite, but go sit in the quiet corner and do that. I had, activities over there on my little table and all that stuff. And they just sat there. When they were done, they could leave. But when more people came remote, I told everyone, I said, everybody's in my office at the same time, because I'm like, please, I don't have a quiet corner anymore. Like, I need you guys to stop pinging me on Zoom all day. Stop trying to video G-chat me all day. Like, the phone still works. We still have phone. We still have email. We still have other means of communication. You don't need to see me all of the time, because you didn't see me all of the time before. So, we need to relax that conversation. So that was the transition for me in terms of how I, readjusted to my to my remote work. And I'm not sure, how we're ever going to get back to that. And I don't have a problem with that. Like, I love that, you have a bunch of live shows like this new, like when the boom that we had of, more people, going live, more people, doing podcasts, more people doing things and having conversations and breeding collaboration in a way that they were teaching, our conventional folks how to do things. I think that's amazing. And that's what we need to continue to push forward. We don't need to go back to the, meeting for hours and hours in a boardroom about the same stuff that could have been an email.
Yeah, I think there's two things both of you have said in that duration. One, the internship has also become kind of a refuge for people who are graduating, because they get to watch the job market for another year and watch it evolve and change. So it gives them a chance to strategize. And that's something I learned and thought more of from the Wednesday show, when we had people who work in career services were on the show, both, and shout out to both Brad Minton and Cassie Spencer, provided great intel to what they're thinking. You're right, Keirsten. They don't know anything else, but they do understand. They took into account what was of the past, and they said, no, this is how we're going to do. And therefore they were able to strategize in a way that we've never thought of. And sometimes the waiting game is not such a bad thing, especially if you have an internship already, and you can go ahead and use that to gain more information and to gain more experience while you're doing it and get paid to do it. So that's not a bad strategy. I think the other part is I go back to something that Damian said, that unfortunately, and I'll put this on the baby boomers and maybe partly on Gen X. See, we include you guys. that we want to hold on to much of the past as possible, because we only know that as being the norm. A lot of us are uncomfortable right now. And I'll tell you, from personal experience, when I applied to going live, I knew I hated video. I hate it with a passion, but I knew it was going to be something that had to be done. I had to go and because if I'm going to expand my reach and help people who are needing it, I need to go where the people are. I want to read a couple of the comments that we got here, and let's see. Thank you, Karen, for commenting. This is a very interesting comment. I love your idea of the quiet corner, Kristen. And wanting digital peace is important to develop too. You're giving so many thoughts about how I could declutter my work time. Absolutely, this is
Thank
a
you,
great
Karen, for
time.
that comment.
Yes, thank you. And that wrapped up everything that we're understanding, that we are much more productive away from the office, from all the distractions and all the meaningless work interactions. And they're not meaningless to the point they don't have any value. They have absolutely nothing to add as far as production. So when you're away from that, it adds on to the production part of it. I believe this is Simone, and she says, yes, Eagle Trip, you said it, Damian, what productivity is shown with the scare tactic. And, it does. It's one of those things that continue to add stress and anxiety. And that's something that we got to manage. Now, that's not to say that you don't have that stress and anxiety remote. Is that you now have there are more ways to cut yourself off from some of that stress and anxiety. I know, Keirsten, you are really big on having the space that you want and creating the way you want, so that you can work the way that you want. So therefore, you're 100% responsible for your work environment as much as you can control.
Yes, absolutely. I'm 100% on board with being, like, even today, like, I'm not in the place I normally would be in to do these types of things. But, I made that adjustment and made myself comfortable in the space. I would have had anxiety about this. I would have put up a background to kind of mask the fact that I'm sitting in my living room.
Mhm.
I would have, I would have been, frantic about, like what I do have on, and again, I
Mhm.
did the best I could because there's only have limited options as far as like pulling things on over this boot.
What
So,
what what goes with the ankle with
I
the
wear a
ankle
dress every
cast,
day.
right?
I wear a dress every day. That's all I'm gonna say. Like
Hey,
it may be the
that
same
it
one,
works.
but hey,
It's a dress.
I
it's
I
a
am not
dress.
going to go back to the last show to see what you were wearing to see if that was actually true.
No, no,
But
no. I didn't have the boot. I didn't have the boot then.
yes,
I didn't
uh,
have the boot then.
yes, Kirsten, I'm going to stay with you a little bit because
Okay.
Chloe brings up another point in something that I know that I've heard you talk ad nauseum about in your way. And I talk about probably not as much lately, but this is true. It says, will you touch on how crucial the state of diversity, inclusion, and equity is? And not particularly in those order, but all that to say is that how people of color are affected differently being remote, and there's a lot of dynamics that we could run through here, but I know there's one or two are top of your mind.
So yes, things are extremely different. And I mentioned on your last show, I wanted us when we talk about these return to work conversations to include people who do not work white collar jobs, to include people who technically did not leave the office, um,
Hmm.
and who our productivity was dependent upon.
Hmm.
The folks in logistics, the folks who are putting your packages together, delivering them, getting your groceries, cashiers, restaurant workers, just anyone, hospital workers, anyone that technically did not leave the office, and that goes for some white collar jobs as well. If they were in an essential field or essential industry,
Hmm.
they had to go to work as well. And I think we need to continue that conversation because at the end of the day, their jobs will change as well. The way that the way that they worked, the way that they approach things changed, and it's not going back to what it was before. And there was a great deal of strain that was put upon those folks as well because they're the ones who were seeing, the great, as you call it, resignation out of those roles into something that's a little bit less stressful day to
Hmm.
day.
Hmm.
Um, in terms of how, and again, those jobs are the ones that people who look like me, Black people, brown people, uh, those folks are in those jobs more so than others. Public transportation is another thing. I think I mentioned this on the last show. I got into somewhat of a tiff with a recruiter group. We were having a happy hour, and they were complaining in the way that recruiters do.
Hmm.
From our high horse, and saying how the office this, the office that. And I said, well, did we ever think about these great, especially in tech companies, these office parks that are now empty? And it's not just the employees, that we had the company's employees we had to think about. What about the folks who are working the grounds? What about the security company that guards the building? What about the folks who clean the building? What about the cafeteria staff? I worked at a company once for 9 days, who had a beautiful campus. It wasn't a great work culture, but again, they had everything there. I didn't have to leave to use the dry cleaner. I didn't have to
Hmm.
leave to get my car cleaned. I did not have to leave to eat. Everything I wanted was right there. I could call concierge service. They even had a medical center. Like, if you go to urgent care or go to a walk-in clinic, they had that. Like, you didn't
Hmm.
have to leave. And I don't think that they really understood what that was sending, what message that was really sending. It does, in some people's mind, give you a psychology around, I have to be here
Hmm.
because I don't have any reason to leave. You spill something on your shirt, go to the company store and buy a new one.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
and
know,
I think for Damien, and I know he can speak to this very well because we've had conversations about some of it. There's the perception of whether you're going to, whose team is better and more profitable and will thrive, or team I'm at work and have to be in the office, as opposed to team, I'm working remotely from home. And unfortunately, there's that dichotomy where you have those who are working in the office have to, because that's where their jobs are. More than likely, those are the people, Black people and people of color, etc., as opposed to people who are working from home. More than likely, and or should I say, a good portion of them are the white men and women who are able to work, who have the high collar jobs. If we're dividing if we're parsing the Red Sea here, but all in all, I think I think it's going to play for some companies. If that's how they're hired, that's how it's going to be seen, and it could even be worse for people, Black people, and people of color.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. I was
Yeah,
going to
Okay.
say one
I
one
was
other
want
thing. One
Damien to
other.
get in, and
Sorry
I know
about that.
you got stuff to say, Kirsten, but right now, right now, I want to get Damien's point of view because he does have a very unique point of view.
Okay.
Um, two things. Well, a
Mhm.
few more than two. Yes, when you part the sea, there is you're parting color too,
Yeah,
and when that happens, there is not equity. And I think what Mark is talking about is my approach. My approach is that diversity is a lifestyle. It's not corporate platitudes. It's not things that you put up on the wall. It's a lifestyle. And by lifestyle, I mean at work, at church, at home, your neighbors, the whole nine yards. Because if you live it as a lifestyle, you will ring true. And you can tell very quickly a person who lives their life immersed in diversity versus those that don't. And I could tell you several stories, especially being in the South. But I know we don't have time. But watch where you work, watch how your leaders act, uh, and you can learn very quickly which way uh, which way it goes. And fortunately, there is discussion going on. I don't think it's enough. I don't think it's fast enough, but at least it's a start.
I love
absolutely.
that.
And to add on to that, the Job Seeker Nation survey that was just released a couple of months back, they said 42% of the respondents are the ones that would say, "Hey, if they're not diverse, I won't go work for you." So
Mhm.
if you're a job seeker, you're going to dig into the intel, and it might be just as Damien said. Why are so many white people working at home, and why are so many Black people are in the office? You may not need to ask. You can draw very safe conclusions by looking at that and saying that, yeah, the equity is certainly it has bottomed out. And the question many times for people of color and Black people, are they going to go ahead and look at the exit door a whole lot closely? I think some of them might be stuck in some of those, but I think the ones that might be considering a company that might be recruited because they're a diverse candidate, that they might be saying, not your company. And I think that's where a big change may even happen now, more so than we ever had before. Kirsten, your
No,
take?
I love what Damien said about diversity being a lifestyle, and
Yeah.
going back to the question. I believe it was Chloe who posed it about
Yes.
the state of D&I and it being crucial. I don't even like diversity to be a part of that conversation, because when we speak diversity, we're speaking mostly about representation that turns into tokenism. We're speaking mostly about numbers. you know, I I like I prefer now these conversations we're having. And if diversity is your lifestyle, because let's be clear, your company's been talking about this for how many years? As
Yeah.
you said, like me, ad nauseum, they've
Yeah.
been talking.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right.
we're committed to diversity. We're
Right.
committed to equity. We're committed, but we haven't done thing. Yeah,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know. So it's about inclusion and belonging. Like, do I belong here? If I feel like I belong here, then your DEI strategy is working. If I feel included here, then your strategy is working. It is real. It's not just talk. So
Yeah.
again, I love that you made me stop talking so that Damian can come in and have that. So that I can feedback off of that, because that is essentially, like, that's it. If diversity is a lifestyle, we don't need to we don't need to have all of these, other extra things that we're doing and pretending to do, and making these bold claims and these platitudes, this performative junk that is going on right now. You're really, if you're committed to diversity, as you say you are, then you should have no problems, or you addressing, when someone says that they don't feel included, when someone says, how do do I really belong here? And if you can't show them those things, and if you can't make those changes, or if it's not evident to you, or you're like, what do you mean? Then that's where you need to just stop saying that you're a DEI expert. Stop saying you're committed to it, because you're not.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely. And I think speaking to some of that, what you're saying is that the companies I see that are really serious. I don't know if you all, if you should be reading a book called Colorfuls by Sharon Smith Ekinsea, I believe is her name. Uh, and there's a really great story about that. And I used her book in a presentation to the Career Thought Leaders Consortium this past March. But one of the things is she talks to a lot of the big companies of what they're doing. And what I've noticed is that when you have a longitude a strategy, that's when you are really committed. The ones with a short term, short vision strategy are expecting to say, oh, if we do this, that will be it. Or if we do these 10 things, you could have 10 strategies that can all work. But if they don't have a long term effect, then they're not going to be an effective, it's not going to be an effective DI strategy. Go ahead, Damian.
what I was going to say is two things. If you want to test an executive, ask them, what is the name of the person that empties your trash every night?
Ooh.
That's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, there's another dimension to diversity. And here's what I mean. How do you talk to people that do different jobs? Meaning your staff, the person that comes in and empties the trash, do you know their name? Do you know their family? When a person comes to change your light bulb, do you talk to them? Do you engage with them? Do you treat them as an equal when you are relating to them? There's that whole other dimension of how you treat people equally that is
Mm-hmm.
also a bridge, if you will, that make people comfortable. And oh, by the way, that's the way everybody should be treated. So I just wanted to add that thought.
No, it's wonderful, and people are resonating what you're saying. This is Derek says that I love the comment, Damien. Diversity is a lifestyle. Amen to that. And Simone says, love what you
Thank you.
said. For sure that we're all essential. Love that. Karen says that right. I remember being in a pool of almost all white recruiters more than 10 years ago at a conference, all clamoring to meet a great diversity speaker on our book tour, Stephen Graham, and the lack of awareness of how little actual DEI was actually. And it kind of got cut off here, but her point is taken. Is that this is an important part of the discussion that we're going to have. I see it's going to be even a bigger discussion when everything becomes really exposed, and in the fall and in the winter when everybody else is getting back and looking at. And I remember even being part of a church some years back who actually they were before the time in some sense, is that they looked around and they were a large group, and a couple 100,000 around the world, and they looked at all their guys that they had in the inner circle, and it says we should be ashamed of ourselves because we have nothing but us. We're Black people, we're the Latino people that are in a congregation. This doesn't reflect all that. Now that's good to recognize it, but then you've got to also go and you've got to go and work through the batch of dough, uh, so to speak. So I think it takes time. And so, therefore, again, if you don't have a long term DEI strategy, you might be just hitting everything. And I love what Karen says, respect is everything. Thank you very
Yes.
much. Well, we have come to the top of the hour. We didn't get to the rest of what we had talked about, but I thought what everybody was chiming in on questions that were much more important. We have a little subtle oversighting because Stedman Graham was mentioned in this in this chat, but anyway, Keirsten, what is
Yes.
up and what is next for you?
July is pretty busy for me, but it's mostly things that I can't invite people to, with the exception of at this point, there's a Rec Fest this summer. Last summer, I did a panel with that was led by my good friend Janine Dennis, and we're bringing it back. It's an international conference, and it's going to be Black women talking about our experiences in the workplace. And I hope folks will sign up. It's a free conference, and I hope you guys will sign up. We're going live Friday, July 16th.
Awesome.
Right.
Great. Damian, what you got coming up?
Two big things. We're just beginning an outreach to all of the clergy in our region, so that they can learn a little bit more about professionals in transition and share it with their congregations. Many times that leads to talking directly to folks that need support. And then the other thing is I am working now on a project that involves the military and the transition issues that they face. So those are the kind of the two big things I'm going to be doing throughout the summer.
Yep. Simone is asking Kirsten, you might want to connect with her. You
Okay.
two should connect. So she's asking about the link for the conference. You should definitely, whenever Kirsten speaks, you should follow her around for
Oh,
sure.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
now.
So,
Wait till
I'm sorry. I have one
later.
other thing.
Yes, sir. Yes,
And
ma'am.
I'm going to call him out so that he can't say no. But
Okay.
I got approved for my LinkedIn Live. Some
Awesome.
of that was motivated by you, because I too did not like being on camera and all of
Mhm.
that. But I can't keep telling folks that they have to stretch themselves and do things that are uncomfortable if I don't want to do them as well.
Right.
So, Damian, I'd love to have you come on and talk about Pitt on my live show. And when I launch it here in the next couple of weeks, and because all the things that you're doing are right in my wheelhouse as well. And when it comes to career coaching, I too work with veterans organizations and churches to get folks, job seekers, who are maybe even wanting to return to the workforce or who are transitioning out of the military into the workforce. And I do a great deal of coaching and workshops and webinars and things with them. So I'd love to talk to you so that you can to amplify your organization a bit more.
Awesome.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Fantastic. And me, it doesn't matter what's coming up. I'm always
You have
I'm
like
always
30, you
I'm
have
always
30 shows,
around
30
doing
shows,
yes.
18 articles.
Yeah. Yeah. Join us next Wednesday for Job Seeker Nation. And we stream to the same places. Join us here next Friday. Next Wednesday is going to be kind of special because we're going to have My friends Ryan Roten, Andy Foote, going to be a part of the show,
Oh,
and they were nice enough for me to include me in their book that they have out about
Ooh,
LinkedIn. So
nice.
so that's kind of cool. And I got a bunch of other cool stuff that's happening too, but it's not important right now. The main thing is that you guys are getting the main information that you need to help you with your job search. And again, this is the modern job search checklist. We strive to not only reach as many as possible, but we're here to help you. So wherever we're talking about up here, we abandon it so that we can help you. We always stream to YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook, so you can find our LinkedIn page, not our LinkedIn page, but our Facebook page, the Modern Job Search Checklist. Check us out on YouTube. Subscribe there. We got a bunch of videos up there already. There's going to be
mhm.
more added as time goes on. And also for Job Seeker Nation as well. But I want to thank the rest of you for joining us here every week. Next week is going to be holiday weekend, so it's likely
Oh,
that it's just going to be me and you, Damian, for that particular show, which is quite fine and fine with me. In the meantime, the rest of you have a great week. Thank you very much for joining us here, and we'll look forward to seeing you next Friday again here at 1 p.m. Eastern.